Hello! My name is David, and for years, my life felt like a loop. Wake up, go to work, come home, sleep, repeat. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't truly living either. One evening, while scrolling through my phone, I came across a quote. Your life does not get better by chance. It gets better by change. Something about those words hit me hard. I had spent so much time waiting for life to change instead of making it happen myself. That night, I sat down with a notebook and wrote, "Try something new every day." It was a simple idea, but it felt like a challenge. Could I really break out of my routine? The next morning, I decided to start small. Instead of taking the same route to work, I walked through a different street. That's when I saw it. A small cafe I had never noticed before. On impulse, I stepped inside. The smell of fresh coffee wrapped around me, and soft jazz played in the background. A friendly barista greeted me with a smile. "Good morning," she said, and for the first time in years, I felt something different. Hope. As I sat in the cafe, sipping my coffee, I looked around at the people. Some were reading, others were chatting, and a few were working on laptops. It felt different. Not rushed, not routine, just alive. "First time here?" the barista asked, smiling. "Yeah," I admitted. "I usually take a different route." "Well, welcome. We like to think of this place as a little escape from the ordinary." An escape from the ordinary. That's exactly what I needed. As I walked to work that morning, something felt lighter in me. It wasn't just about the cafe. It was about making choices that broke the cycle. I started thinking, what else could I change? That evening, instead of watching TV, I took out my old notebook. Years ago, I had written ideas for a book. I had always dreamed of writing, but life got in the way. I flipped through the pages, remembering the excitement I once felt. And that's when I made my second decision. I would start writing again. I set a goal, just 1 page a day. Not much, but enough to feel like I was moving forward. The next morning, I woke up feeling different. Excited. Little did I know this small decision would change everything. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Instead of grabbing my phone and scrolling through social media, I opened my notebook. The blank page stared back at me. For a moment, doubt crept in. What if I'm not good enough? What if my ideas are boring? Then I reminded myself, this wasn't about being perfect. It was about change. So I picked up my pen and started writing. At first, the words felt awkward, like trying to run after years of sitting still. But as I kept going, something shifted. The ideas began to flow, and for the first time in years, I felt alive. That night, instead of watching TV, I wrote another page. The next day, I wrote again. A week later, I had 10 pages. It wasn't much, but it was more than I had done in years. One evening at the cafe, I met someone unexpected. I was sitting in my usual spot, notebook open, when a woman at the next table leaned over. "Are you a writer?" she asked. I hesitated. "I'm trying to be." She smiled. "I'm a writer too. Well, sort of. I'm working on my first book." Her name was Emma, and she had been struggling with the same fears I had. We talked for hours, about books, about life, about taking risks. Before she left, she said something that stuck with me. The difference between a dream and a goal is action. That night I made a decision. I wasn't just going to write. I was going to finish my book. And just like that, my life had started to change. Meeting Emma was like finding a missing puzzle piece. She understood my struggles, the self-doubt, the procrastination, the fear of failure. We started meeting at the cafe every few days, notebooks open, coffee in hand. Some days we barely spoke, just writing side by side. Other times we exchanged ideas, challenged each other, and shared our progress. One evening, Emma asked, "What's your book about?" I hesitated. "It's about a guy stuck in a routine, afraid to take risks. Then one day he decides to change everything." Emma smiled. "Sounds familiar." I laughed. "Maybe a little." "What happens next?" she asked. I shrugged. "I don't know yet." "Well," she said, tapping her notebook, "then you have to keep writing to find out." Her words stuck with me. That night I pushed past my doubts and kept writing. And the more I wrote, the more I realized this story wasn't just about my character. It was about me. One morning, as I sat at my desk at work, something hit me. I was changing on paper, but what about real life? Was I just writing a story, or was I finally ready to live one? And that's when I knew it was time for the biggest change yet. For weeks, I had been writing about change, but was I actually changing? Every morning I went to work, sat at my desk, and did what was expected. But inside, I felt different, restless, like I was living someone else's life. One day during lunch, Emma texted me, "Emma, if you could do anything, no fear, no doubts, what would it be?" I stared at the message. The answer was obvious. Me, write, travel, tell stories. Her reply came instantly. "Emma, then why aren't you doing it?" I had 1,000 excuses, bills, stability, fear, but deep down I knew the truth. I was afraid of taking the risk. That night, I opened my notebook and wrote a new list. Not just small changes, big ones. At the top, quit my job and chase my dream. The next morning, I walked into my boss's office. My heart pounded, my palms were sweaty, but I took a deep breath and said it. "I'm resigning." He looked surprised. "Are you sure?" "No," I admitted, "but that's why I have to do it." Walking out of that office, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Free. Of course, quitting wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just writing a story. I was living one. The first morning after quitting my job, I woke up feeling terrified. No emails to check, no meetings, no routine, just a blank page in front of me, both in my notebook and in life. What now? I met Emma at the cafe, my mind racing with doubts. "What if I made a mistake?" I asked. "What if I fail?" She stirred her coffee, smiling. "Then you fail, and you learn, and you try again." I sighed. "Easy for you to say." She laughed. "Not really. I'm scared too." That's when she told me her secret. She had been planning to leave her job as well to focus on her book full-time. "But unlike you, I haven't taken the leap yet," she admitted. That's when I realized something. I had been so focused on my fear that I hadn't seen the truth. We were both on the edge of something big. That night, I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit around waiting for inspiration. I was going to do something bold. So I bought a one-way ticket. To where? I didn't even know yet. But I had promised myself that I would travel, write, and chase my dreams. It was time to stop hesitating. When I told Emma, she stared at me in shock. "You're actually doing it?" "Yeah," I said, grinning. "And you should too." She laughed. "You're crazy." "Maybe," I said. "But that's what makes a good story, right?" She didn't answer right away, but I could see something shift in her eyes. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready to take the leap too. The day of my flight arrived faster than I expected. As I stood at the airport, backpack in hand, I felt a strange mix of excitement and fear. Emma had made her decision too. She wasn't coming with me, at least not yet. "I have my own journey to take," she said, "but I'll see you out there." We hugged goodbye, knowing that this wasn't the end of our story, just the beginning of two new ones. As the plane took off, I stared out the window, watching the city shrink below me. Just a few weeks ago, I was trapped in a routine, afraid of change. Now, I was chasing the life I had always wanted. It wasn't easy. There were struggles, moments of doubt, and days when I questioned everything. But for the first time, I was living with purpose, writing, exploring, and embracing the unknown. One evening, sitting in a small cafe halfway across the world, I opened my notebook and wrote, "Change is scary, but staying the same is scarier. The difference between a dream and reality is action." That was the lesson I had learned. Life doesn't change until you decide to change it. And as I looked at the blank page before me, I smiled, because for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid of the unknown. I was ready to write my own story. Moral of the story: your life won't change by chance. It changes when you take action. The hardest step is the first one, but once you take it, you'll never look back.